Good afternoon, and welcome to the EPA TSCA Title VI webinar series supporting the formaldehyde final rule. My name is Toya Goodlow, and I'm the implementation officer for the third-party certification program for formaldehyde. I have some general information on the final rule. Our rule published in the Federal Register on December 12, 2016. A link to the final rule and other rule resources, including our compliance guides, our question and answers that are frequently asked, the response to comments documents, are all available on EPA's website at www.epa.gov/formaldehyde. And now, without further ado, I will transition to Jeff Botnick, who will begin our presentation on CDX.
Thanks, Toya. Good afternoon, everybody. As Toya mentioned, today I'll be going over the TSCA Title VI reporting tool, specifically geared for third-party certifiers. I will be referring to third-party certifiers as TPCs throughout the presentation. I'll also be referring to the reporting tool as the Title VI application throughout the presentation as well. Please keep in mind that the purpose of this presentation is to give everyone an overview of what the application looks like, as well as certain data or fields that may need to be provided by the user. It is not to give a detailed overview of every screen and every form of the application itself. As I mentioned today, I'll be going over the slides which show screenshots of various forms of the application, and also do a brief demo at the end of showing the slides to give everyone a better feel of how the application actually works within CDX. Now, to actually access the Title VI reporting tool, you'll need to register with EPA's Central Data Exchange, or CDX. If you do not have an account with CDX, I will show that briefly in the demo and in the slides as well. However, it's important to note that during the registration process that you register for the third-party certifier authorized official role. If you have any supports, they can register as a third-party certifier support. Now, when accessing the Title VI application, I'll be showing, first of all, how to complete a TPC application for recognition agreement. It's also important to remember that there can only be one TPC application per organization. In order to complete any other forms, you must have an approved TPC application. Now, I'll be going over briefly how to actually register for the correct role in CDX. This is a screenshot of the EPA's CDX login screen. If you already have an account, you can enter in your user ID and password and click on the login button. But as I mentioned previously, if you don't have an account, go ahead and click on the Register with CDX button to create an account. After logging in, the first screen you'll see is the My CDX screen. And in order to register for the correct role, the first step that you'll need to do is click on the Add Program Service button. You'll see it highlighted in the red box there. After doing so, you'll be directed to the Program Service screen. On the screen, you'll need to click on CSPP, Submissions for Chemical Safety and Pesticide Programs. After doing so, you'll be directed to the Role Access screen, which you see here. Now, under the Select Role drop-down, you'll see several roles that are associated with the CSPP program service. For purposes of accessing the Title VI application, you'll need to select the TPC Authorized Official role. After selecting that role from the drop-down, go ahead and click on the Request Role Access button, and it'll direct you to the Organization Information screen. I recommend that you remain that the radio button remains selected on Select a Current Organization, and from there you can select an organization from the drop-down list, which will show a list of organizations that you have registered for when you actually registered for a CDX account. However, if you don't see or you need to register for another organization, you can click on the Request to Add an Organization radio button, and from there you can add an organization to your account. After doing so, click on the Submit Request for Access button, and you'll be directed back to the My CDX screen. Currently, all the roles are active in CDX. However, if you register for them today, you will not be able to actually click on the link to access the application. Again, you'll actually be able to register for the roles, but you won't be able to access the application until the application actually goes live. To actually access the application, once the application goes live, go ahead and click on the TPC authorized official link. You'll see there, it'll be highlighted in blue, or it'll be outlined in blue. After clicking on the link, you'll be immediately directed to the TSCA Title VI home screen. From this screen, you can access the resources link, the user management link, and the link that will direct you to creating and submitting TSCA Title VI forms. The resources link has other links that will direct you to the user guide, as well as other information related to the Title VI reporting rule. If you have supports that you'd like to assign, you can do so by accessing the user management link. Right now, I'm going to focus on how to create and submit a TSCA Title VI application. So to do so, the first step is to click on the Applications and Notifications link there. It's the first link and it's highlighted in the red box. It will direct you to the Applications and Notifications screen as you see here. When you first access the Title VI application for the first time, this screen will be blank, and the only selection that you will have in the Select Form Type dropdown is the TPC application. As I mentioned before, you will not be able to create or submit any other forms until you have an approved TPC application. Once you click on the Start New Form button, you'll be directed to the Enter Passphrase screen. In this screen, you'll be asked to create a passphrase, which you will use to access, and any other supports that you designate will use to access the form. It is important to remember that because of encryption processes, that this form cannot be reset and your password cannot be reset as well. So it's important to remember that any passphrase that you use to create a form needs to be remembered by you or by the appropriate support. After creating a passphrase, you'll be directed to the first page in the Title VI TPC application form, which is the Organization Information screen. As you can see in the screenshot here, some of the information will already be pre-populated in the form itself. Any blank fields you'll need to populate yourself. If you select the CBI checkbox, you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen, a pop-up screen will appear that's shown here in this slide. Now, it's important to note that for every CBI indication that you make, you will see the same pop-up screen. To navigate away from the screen, click the OK button in the bottom right-hand corner. After clicking on that CBI checkbox, for certain fields, you will need to provide a justification for CBI. However, those fields are not required fields. This is another screenshot of the Organization Information screen. As you can see, you can upload your TPC certification of accreditation, and you can also select the composite wood product certified from the panel there below. Once you've completed filling in all the necessary fields, you can click on the Next button. If you have clicked on the Next button without completing all the necessary fields, you will be shown a red error message at the top of the screen, and the fields that are required to be completed will be highlighted in red. The next screen that you'll see is the point of contact screen. Now, the point of contact screen can be filled out regularly by entering in all the necessary information in the fields. However, if the person filling out the form is the POC, then that person can click on the Copy CDX Registration button, and the associated fields will be populated, as you can see below. After completing this screen, click on the Next button. Now, if the organization that you designate is outside of the United States, you will be asked to fill out the U.S. Agent Information screen. Again, the screen will only show up if your organization is outside of the United States. But as you can see, we'll ask for information similar to what you have seen on the point of contact screen. Now, after you click the Next button on the point of contact screen or U.S. Agent Information screen, if applicable, you'll be directed to the Experience Questions screen. On this screen, you'll be asked to answer the 3 questions that you see there and provide experience in the text boxes below. After doing so and clicking the Next button, you'll be directed to the Affirmation and Documentation screen. On this screen, you'll be asked to select both the affirmation checkboxes and upload any documentation if necessary. After doing so, then go ahead and click the Submit button to begin the submission process. Now, the submission process is the same for all of the Title VI forms, so I'll be going into detail with the Title VI application, or TPC application specifically. But again, as I just mentioned, the submission process is the same for all forms. And the first screen you'll see after you click the Submit process, or Submit button, is the Submission Process Validate screen. What happens is that the application will go through a global validation and will ensure that all the necessary data has been entered in the form correctly. If no validation errors were found, you can click on the Continue button. If there were validation errors, a pop-up box will appear and it will provide you with a link directing you to the correct page that you will need to make the necessary correction. Again, if no validation errors were found, you can click on the Continue button, which will navigate you to the PDF generation screen. On the PDF generation screen, you can click on the View PDF or View Sanitized PDF button to view a regular or sanitized version of the form. If you have made any CBI indications on the form, then the View Sanitized PDF button will display a sanitized version of the form. However, if no CBI indications were made, then both the View PDF and View Sanitized PDF will show the same version of the form. To continue on to the next step of the submission process, click on the Continue button, and it will direct you to the Chrome or Submission screen. On this screen, you'll be asked to enter in the CDX password that you used to register your account in CDX. You'll be also asked to provide the answer to a secret question that you had selected when registering for your account in CDX as well. After providing those two pieces of information, you'll be asked to click the Submit button on the Certify panel. And then the final step is to click the Finish button under the Success panel. After clicking the Finish button, you'll be directed back to the Applications and Notifications screen that I showed you before. After a successful submission, you'll be allowed to download a copy of record. Now, this is available for every form as well. When downloading the copy of record, please keep in mind that the form will have to be successfully submitted, and to do so, you can click on the green arrow icon that you see in the copy of record column there on the right side of your screen. After clicking on that icon, you'll be asked to enter in the passphrase that you used to create the form specifically. And after entering in that passphrase and clicking the Next button, you'll be directed to the Chrome screen once again. And as before with the submission process, you'll be asked to enter in the password that you used to register with your account in CDX, and also the answer to the secret question that you used to register your account as well. After entering both those pieces of information, you'll be directed to the copy of record screen. Here you'll be able to download versions of the PDF of the form, and you'll also be able to download any uploaded documents that you may have attached to the submission. After downloading all the necessary information that you need, you can click on the Home screen, or the Home button, and it'll direct you back to the Home screen. As I mentioned, the copy record includes a PDF of the form, as well as any copies of uploaded documents. And again, as I've mentioned previously, this process is available for any Title VI form that you submit. Now I'll be going over briefly four different forms, and I'll be starting off with the failed quarterly test form. Again, in order to access the form, you'll need to have an approved TPC application. Once you have an approved TPC application, the form type will be available in the Select Form Type drop-down that you see on the bottom left. After selecting the failed quarterly test entry and clicking on Start New Form, you'll be asked to create a passphrase as well. And after creating a passphrase, you'll be directed to the failed quarterly test form screen as you see here. After being directed to the screen, you'll be asked to select a panel producer, and if necessary, enter in any contract labs that you may have had as well. To make an entry into the field, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, you'll see a panel shown here, in which you'll need to select the necessary product and enter in the requested information that you see on the screen there. After entering in all the necessary information, click the Save button that you see there at the top of the screen, and the information will be saved to the table. Once you've entered in all the necessary information that you'd like to report, you can click the Submit button that you see there at the bottom of the screen. And as I mentioned before, the submission process is the same as it is when you submit the Title VI TPC application. The next form I'm going to go over very briefly is the Quality Control Limit Exceedance form. As before, you need to have an approved TPC application in order to be able to select this form. But in the Select Form Type dropdown, and after selecting Quality Control Limit Exceedance, go ahead and click the Start New Form button. After doing so, again, you'll be asked to create a passphrase. And after you create a passphrase, you'll be directed to the Quality Control Limit Exceedance, as you see here. Now, again, the first step you'll be asked to do is to select a panel producer to add to the form there that you see at the top of the screen. After selecting a panel producer, you'll be asked to enter in information to the table. First by selecting a product, and then by entering in the rest of the information that you see there in the screenshot towards the bottom of the screen. After you've entered in all the necessary fields and click the Save button, all that information will be populated to the table. Again, once you've completed entering in all the necessary information, you can click the Submission or the Submit button at the bottom of the screen, and it will begin the submission process for this form. The second to last form I'll be going over briefly is the Reduced Testing and Exemption Notification form. Again, you will only be able to have access to start and submit this form if you have an approved TPC application. To start the form, select the form type from the drop-down and click on the Start New Form button. And again, you'll be asked to create a passphrase, and after doing so, you'll be directed to the Reduced Testing and Exemption Notification screen. As with the other forms, the first step that you'll be asked to do is select a panel producer. And again, after doing so, you'll be asked to add entries into the table that you see there. The first step will be to select a product, and then after selecting a product, you'll be asked to complete all the necessary fields that you see in the screenshot. After completing all the fields, click on the Save button to populate that information into the table above. After you've selected everything that you'd like to report on, again, go ahead and click the Submit button there at the bottom of the screen, and it will begin the submission process. Now, the last form I'll be going over before I do a quick demo here is the TPC Annual Report. Now, the TPC Annual Report, again, as before, can only be created once you have an approved TPC application. It's also important to note that you will only be allowed to create one TPC Annual Report per reporting year. To create an annual report, click on the Start New Annual Report button, and you'll be again directed to create a passphrase for the form. After doing so, the first screen that you'll see is the TPC Annual Report screen, where you select the reporting year, and you can also select if you'd like to share the annual report with CARP. After filling in that information and clicking the Next button, you'll be directed to the Panel Producer Information screen. The first step here will be to add a panel producer, and after doing so, you'll be asked to add product information and quarterly test information as you see there in the panels. To add product information, click on the Add Product button, and it will direct you to the product information screen that you see here. You will first be asked to select a product and enter in a resin system. After doing so, you can enter in entries into the table below, as you see, by first clicking the Add button, which will open up the panel. And then again, as I mentioned before, you'll be asked to fill in all the necessary information in the fields that you see here in the screenshot. To save that information and populate it to the table, you'll be asked to click on the Save button first. And then after doing so, you can click on the Add Product button you see there outlined in the red rectangle below to add that information to the Panel Producer Information screen. To add quarterly test information, the process is the same. Click on the Add Quarterly Test button, and you'll be directed to the Quarterly Test screen. Once you've populated all the necessary fields with the information that you'd like to report, you can click on the Add Quarterly Test button there, again highlighted in the red box at the bottom of the screen. Then that information will be populated to the associated panel producer. You can add more than one panel producer and delete panel producers as well. But after you've entered in all the panel producers that you'd like to report, click on the Next button to be directed to the List of Laboratories screen. On this screen, you'll be asked to first choose a laboratory and enter in primary contact information. But as you see, scrolling towards the bottom of the screen, you'll also be asked to enter in 5 data sets or 5 equivalence data points. After entering in all the necessary information, as you can see here, you'll be asked to click the Save button as was shown at the top of the screen, and then you'll be asked to click the Next button once you've completed reporting on all of the laboratories that you'd like. After clicking the Next button, you'll be directed to the Inter-Lab Comparison screen. If you select the checkbox that you see there, then you'll be asked to include those 3 fields that you see in the screenshot. After doing so and clicking the Next button, you'll be directed to the Nonconformity screen. Again, to record a new nonconformity, all you have to do is click on the Add button, enter in the information that you see here, and then click the Save button to populate the table with the information that you just entered. This is the last screen on the form, and so after you've entered in all the necessary information, you can click the Submit button to begin the submission process. And again, as I've mentioned before, the submission process is the same for all the forms. So now I'm going to give you a brief demo of the reporting tool itself. Again, my goal here is to just briefly go over some of the forms and show you how each form appears and to give you an idea of the information that you'll be required to enter in each form type. Again, this is the CDX login screen, and if you don't have an account, you can register for one. However, if you do have an account, go ahead and just enter in your user ID and password, and it will direct you to the My CDX screen. Again, as I mentioned in my presentation earlier on, the roles themselves have been activated, however, they're not actually turned on. So if you register for a CDX account, and you already have a CDX account, you can add the associated roles that you need to your CDX account. However, they won't be accessible to the Title VI application just yet. To add the TBC authorized official account, as I mentioned in my presentation, click on the Add Program Service button here at the bottom, and then click on CSPP. Again, from the Select Role drop-down, click on the TBC authorized official, and then click the Request Role Access button. Again, if you maintain the fact that the radio button here is selected, then you can select an organization from the drop-down list. That will show you a list of organizations that you have already registered for in CDX. However, if you want to add an organization, you can click on the Request to Add an Organization radio button and search for and select an organization. After selecting an organization from the drop-down list, click on the Submit Request for Access button, and the role will be added to your MyCDX screen. After the role has been added, you should see that the link is clickable here. Again, the link won't be clickable until the application has actually been turned on, but you can register for the role. After the link is activated, again, just go ahead and click on that screen there. Now, if you have just registered for one company, you won't see this screen. However, because for purposes of this demo, I have registered for multiple roles. So this is the first screen of the Title VI application here. Just to briefly go over what is available, if you click on the Resources tab, you can see helpful web links as well as a copy of the Title VI User Guide, specifically for the TPC Authorized Official. If you have a support role, under the User Management tab, you can select the form and select the supports to assign and unassign. However, for purposes of this demo, I'm just going to briefly go through all of the forms that you have a chance to create and submit. If you're accessing the application for the first time, again, you won't be able to actually create or submit any other forms until you have an approved TPC application. So that form is the only form type available in the drop-down. And if you click the Start New Form button, again, you'll be asked to create a passphrase. Again, just a reminder, please note that this passphrase cannot be reset, so you'll need to remember the passphrase that you use. Again, as I mentioned, this is the first screen that you see in the TPC application. Again, also, as I mentioned briefly, you can see that some information has already been pre-populated in this screen. Now, if you are new EPA-only TPC, you can select that from the drop-down, and you'll be assigned an EPA number. However, if you're an existing CARB TPC, you can also select that from the drop-down and provide your CARB TPC number. Please keep in mind that if you do not have an accreditation body to report to, the proper selection for you is existing CARB TPC. After selecting that entry in the drop-down, you'll see that under accreditation body, you can select no accreditation body at this time. That will allow you to submit the form without actually having an accreditation body. For purposes of this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and select new EPA-only TPC. And then I'm just going to enter some information in the fields here. Very quickly, I just wanted to show that if you click on the CBI checkbox to indicate that a field or a certain set of information is CBI, you'll see the pop-up appear as it does on the screen right now. Again, to remove it, click on the OK button. However, I want to reiterate that every time you click on the CBI checkbox, you'll see the same pop-up. After entering in all the necessary information and clicking on the Next button, you'll be directed to the point of contact screen. Again, as I mentioned, the point of contact, if the person filling out the form is the same as the point of contact, then you can click on the Copy CDX Registration button, and your CDX information will be pre-populated into the fields below. After entering in all the necessary information, you can click on the Next button to navigate to the Experience Questions screen. As I mentioned, you'll need to provide answers to these 3 experience questions in the text fields below. But to give you a brief look about how validation works, if a certain field has been entered incorrectly or if a certain field is missing, if I click the Next button, for example, an error message will appear at the top of the screen, and it will highlight which fields need to be completed. Again, for purposes of this demo, I'm just quickly going to enter in information here. Now, the last screen is the affirmation and documentation screen, and as I mentioned before, you are not allowed to submit the form until you have selected both affirmation checkboxes here. After doing so, to submit the form, click on the Submit button, which will begin the submission process. And as you can see, since I don't have any validation errors, the first screen you'll see is the validation screen. If no validation errors were found, you can click on the Continue button to move on to the next screen, PDF generation screen. Again, this will give you an idea of what information is available after you submit the button. Since I didn't fill out a lot of the fields on the form itself, some of the information won't appear here. But again, the regular and sanitized PDF versions are the same since I didn't make any CBI indications. Click on the Continue button to move on to the Chrome Air submission screen. And as I mentioned before in my presentation, you'll be asked to provide your CDX password here. And after entering it, you'll be asked to answer a secret question. After entering both those pieces of information, you'll be asked to accept the certification statement. And then once you click on the Finish button, you'll be directed back to the application notification screen. The status of your form will be pending for all submitted forms. If your form is approved, the status of the form will change to approved, and you will get an email notification. If your form has been rejected, the status will be rejected, and you will also get an email notification. To make any changes to any form, you'll have to click the lock icon in the Actions column and submit an amendment, which I will go over briefly as well. So for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to access another organization that I already have an approved TPC application. So as you can see here, for example, I have an approved TPC application, and I have all the form types available to me to create and submit. I'll start with the failed quarterly test form. And as you can see, the form creation process is the same. After selecting or creating a passphrase, the first thing you'll be asked to do is to choose a panel producer. Now once you click the link here, the following pop-up will appear, and it will ask you to search from a list of existing panel producers. And again, for the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to enter in some information. And after you click on the search button, you'll see that a bunch of information comes up related to the information that you entered in here. Now, if your panel producer appears in the entry or in the table below, you can select that entry from the table. However, if it doesn't, you can click on the Add New Panel Producer button, and it will ask you to fill in all the necessary information. And then if you click on Save New Panel Producer, that information will be added to the form as you see here. Again, very quickly, I'm just going to enter in some information on the screen here. And as you can see, to enter in entries into the table, click on the Add button. And the first thing you'll be asked to do is to choose a product. And when you choose a product, clicking on the link brings up the same exact process as selecting on a panel producer. You'll be asked to search from a list of existing products. And if your product is now found in the list, you can add a new product. That entry then gets saved into the panel here. After doing that, you'll be asked to fill in all the necessary information. Again, for the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to enter in a couple of just test data. And after clicking the Save button, your entry will be added to the table here. Now you can delete this entry by clicking on the X icon in the Actions column here on the far right, and you can edit the entry by clicking on the product name link under the product name column here. Again, after making all the necessary changes, clicking the Save button will save those changes to the table. Now I'm going to go over the other forms very, very briefly. To start a quality control limit exceedance form is the same process. Again, selecting that form type from the drop-down and clicking on the Start New Form button will direct you to the Create Passphrase screen. After creating a passphrase, you'll be directed to the Quality Control Limit Exceedance screen here. Again, the process is pretty much the same. You'll be asked to choose a panel producer first. Select a panel producer from the table. And after doing so, to actually add entries into the table, click on the Add button. And then click on the Choose Product link. Again, the process is the same for choosing a product. Again, after choosing a product, enter in the necessary information in the fields that are here below. Again, after you've entered in all the necessary information, click on the Save button, and that entry will be added to the table. And as before, you can delete the entry by clicking on the Delete button on the far right, and edit the entry by clicking on the product link under the product link name column. After entering in all the necessary information, to submit the button, you can click on the Submit button here at the bottom, or you can click on the Submit link here in the bottom action bar. Now the second to last form that I'd like to show you very quickly is the reduced testing and exemption notification form. So after selecting that form type from the drop-down, again, it'll ask you to create a passphrase. Now one thing I'd like to go over briefly at this point is to show you the functionality here in the bottom action bar. You can click on the Save button, which will save the form at any time. You can click on the Preview button to view a regular PDF or a sanitized PDF of the form. Again, as I mentioned before, if you don't make any CVI indications, then both the regular PDF and sanitized PDF versions of the form will be the same. You can click on the Validate button, which will run a page validation, and it will show you which information is still required. And you can click on the Submit button to submit the form once the form has been completed. Again, just very quickly to go over this form, the first thing that you're asked is to choose a panel producer. And as you can see, the process, again, is the same for searching for, selecting, and adding a panel producer to the form. Again, to add an entry into the table, all you do is click the Add button, and it will again ask you to choose a product. And again, the process for adding a product is the same, where you search for a product, select the product, and it will be added to the panel here. After selecting the reduced test status and information required based on the reduced test status that you select, you can click on the Save button, and that information will be added to the table. And you can delete or edit that entry in the table the same way as I showed you previously. Now the last form I'd like to show is the TPC annual report. Again, as I mentioned, you can only create one annual report per reporting year. But to create an annual report, click on the Start New Annual Report button. Again, you'll be asked to create a passphrase. And the first thing you'll be asked to select is the reporting year. And if you'd like to share the annual report with CARB, click on the checkbox here. And then click on the Next button to be directed to the panel producer information screen. On this screen, the first step is to click the Add Panel Producer button. And the process, again, is the same as I showed you in those previous forms. Once you've selected a panel producer, you'll be asked to add product information and quarterly test information related to this specific panel producer. To add product information, click on the Add Product button, and you'll be directed to the product information page. On this page, you'll be asked to enter in the necessary information that you see below based on the product that you select. If you want to add one more product, you can click on the Add Product button again, and it will keep adding products to that specific panel. Adding the quarterly test information to that specific panel producer is the same. Click on the Add Quarterly Test button, and you'll be directed to the quarterly test screen. Again, after selecting or entering in all the necessary information and clicking the Add Quarterly Test button here at the bottom, that information will be added to the panel producer information screen. Again, if you want to add more quarterly tests, you can do so. If you want to remove a quarterly test, you can click the X button from the Actions column. And if you'd like to if you'd like to edit an entry in the panel, you can click on the link underneath the Test Date column. For purposes of this demo, I'm just going to move on to the List of Laboratories screen. As I mentioned before, on the List of Laboratories screen, you'll first be asked to choose a laboratory. The process for choosing a laboratory is the same for choosing a panel producer. Again, you search for a laboratory and select one, and it will be added to the laboratory screen here. After doing so, you'll be asked to enter in primary contact information and a phone number. And you can also add secondary contact information if necessary. You'll also be asked to enter in your laboratory accreditation information here in the text box that you see. Now, after choosing a data small method equivalence, you'll be asked to enter in 5 equivalence data points. Again, just for the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to enter in some test information here. If the small chamber is correlated to the large chamber, you click on the checkbox here. And you can enter in the average and standard deviation as you see here. After entering in the average and standard deviation, if you click the check result button, it will test and see if the entries there are equivalent. Again, you are required to enter in 5 data points. And if you'd like to add another data set, you can click on the Add Equivalence Data Set link at the bottom of the screen. To remove a data set that you've added, you can click on the Delete icon on the far right. Once all the information has been entered, click on the Save button, and that entry will be added here to the table. As before, again, with all the tables that we have on all the forms, to delete an entry, just click on the X icon in the Actions column, or to edit the entry, click on the Laboratory link in the Laboratory column. After you've entered in all the necessary information, click on the Next button to be directed to the Inter-Lab comparison screen. Select the checkbox that you see on this screen to indicate that you participated in an inter-lab comparison outside of the CARB inter-lab comparison. If you select that checkbox, you'll be asked to enter in the information that you see on the screen here. If you'd like, you can also add a new organization by clicking on the link there at the bottom of the screen, and you can delete that entry by clicking on the Delete icon. Again, I'm just going to add in test information here. And after entering in all the necessary information, click on the Save button to save those entries. And then click on the Next button here to be directed to the nonconformity screen. On the nonconformity screen, to add an entry into the table, the process is the same as you've seen before. You begin by first clicking on the Add button, selecting the necessary information in the tables, entering in the necessary information in the text boxes, and uploading any documentation if necessary. Once you've selected all the necessary information and entered in all the required fields, click on the Save button, and that information will be added as a line item in the table, as you can see. Again, you can delete that line item by clicking the X icon on the far right, or you can edit the entry by clicking on the date under the date of nonconformity column. The last item I will be showing you very briefly is how to submit an amendment. Now, for a previously submitted form, you'll see here on the far right under the Actions column that there is a lock icon. So for example, if you'd like to make an amendment or a change to the form, all you have to do is click on the lock icon and enter in the passphrase that you used to create that form. Now, the TPC application is a little bit different, so I'm going to show you that form and concentrate on it primarily. If you have an application, for example, that's rejected and you need to make changes to it to resubmit, you click on the Unlock Form icon here. And again, you'll be asked to enter in the passphrase that you used to create the form. As you can see here, the first screen that appears is the amendment screen. So from this screen, you can actually navigate to any other screen on the form and make the necessary changes. You can navigate back to the amendment screen, and the change field text box will require you to enter in exactly the changes that you made. If the application is a renewal application, you can click the checkbox shown here. If you'd like to withdraw from the Title VI program, you can click on the TPC voluntary withdrawal checkbox here. Or if you'd like to indicate a loss of accreditation status, you can click on the loss of accreditation status checkbox here. And that completes the demo for the Title VI application.
Thank you, Jeff. At this time, we will transition to our question and answer session. Christy, I would like to ask you to please cue the callers on the line, please, for questions.
Thank you. At this time, we will begin the question and answer session of the call. If you would like to ask a question, you may do so over the phone or through Adobe Connect. To verbally ask a question over the phone, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad, and you will be placed into a queue. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. If you would like to ask a question through Adobe Connect, please type your question into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Your questions will go to the moderator and will be presented publicly in the order of receipt. We will begin with questions in the room.
Thank you, Christy. I also ask that any questions be directed towards this presentation today on CDX use for TPCs. Are there any questions on the phone line?
We have no audio questions.
Okay, Scott has a question. May we ask about equivalence procedures? We can see if it's related to the database. If it is related to the CDX, you can at this time. Okay, so this isn't exactly related to the database, but I'll read it aloud. A small chamber equivalence required for every small chamber. So, Scott, as it is written, yes, it is required for every small chamber, but we have received this question from other stakeholders who are interested in having some additional guidance on that. So our office here at EPA, we are evaluating that with our management, and we will notify everyone if there is any change to that. You are very welcome. Are there any other questions?
There's still no phone questions.
Okay, thank you. We have a question in the webinar from William. We have several testing labs that are part of one multinational certification body. How would we register? As a single organization or several? If your testing laboratory is being contracted by a TPC, the TPC would register your laboratory under their application. I think I do not see any further questions on the webinar. Are there any additional questions on the phone line?
No, there are no questions.
Okay. We have a question from Scott. Who is the best contact for technical issues about TPC requirements? That will be me, Toya Goodlow. I will put my contact information up after the Q&A session. It'll be on the closing slide. And Scott, there's also a TPC requirements webinar that will be repeated next month. Don't have the exact date in front of me, but it's on the webinar.
22nd of February.
February,
at 12 p.m.
February 22nd. Thank you, Eva. At 12 p.m. You can register for that on our website. Okay, if there are no further questions,